today's video, I'm going to talk about the audacious prayers for your husband. Whether you are married or you are planning or hoping to be married someday, then this video is perfectly right for you. Having the audacity to ask God about your needs from your husband, you have to be aware about God's expectations for husbands, for their wives, and their families. You have to be asking according to God's will so that your requests are within the alignment with God's will. Then you can have the audacity to go before God and confidently ask what you need from God, and He is going to answer. Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you're doing good. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for being part and parcel of this family. In case you're new here, my name is Charity Mugeni and I appreciate you so much for coming. As Christian wives, we are aware of certain roles that God has bestowed upon our husbands to fulfill in our lives as well as in our families. But being aware of that does not mean that we demand these things from our husbands. But instead, we need to be humble and ask God to enable our husbands to fulfill these roles in our lives, because it is not easy. Demanding doesn't make it happen. But when we ask anything from God, He has promised that He will do that for us. And this is the confidence that we have toward Him, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us, in whatever we ask, we know that we have the requests that we have asked of Him. So let us dive right into it. Here are the 3 audacious prayers that you need to pray for your husband because they are according to God's will. The first one is that pray that your husband remains faithful to God, that he remains committed and devoted to God, that he puts God first in everything, no matter the situation, that he remains surrendered to God even as he leads the family. Remember, he has been given a sacred role to play as a spiritual leader of the home or as a priest of the family. So he needs to remain connected with God so that he can tap into God's wisdom to lead the family in all righteousness and love. When your husband remains connected with God, you can be sure that he is leading you with all wisdom that comes from the Word of God, and that he taps that wisdom that is given to him through God's Spirit. So you can always be assured that you and the family, you are on the right track. Otherwise, when he veers away from faith, it can become a threat to the family or to the survival of the family. Being committed to the faith makes him morally upright in terms of his behavior and his actions, and that makes him set a good example even to the children. Number 2, pray that your husband is able and continues to be an enabler and a provider for the family. God has called husbands to be a source of strength and support to their wives and to their families, of which it is not an easy responsibility, because this responsibility goes beyond finances and material support. It also goes up to mental, emotional, and spiritual support. This makes the family feel protected and cared for. Instead of complaining and demanding this kind of expectation from your husband, you need to get onto your knees and ask God to enable your husband to carry out this role as needed. Number 3, pray that your husband strongly takes up the leadership responsibility for the family. God has called husbands to take up the position of servant leadership in the family because that is just His design for the family. You need to pray that your husband is in a position to take up active role in leading the family in every way possible, instead of demanding him to step up and take up that role. Because doing that is just being prideful and trying to remind your husband of his role. It is not your duty for you to remind your husband about his role, him stepping up and becoming someone who can take up leadership role in the family. But it's your responsibility to pray and ask God to enable your husband with all wisdom to take up servant leadership in the family and lead. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands, the foolish one tears hers down. As a wife, you need to be wise enough to know how to be an influence in helping your husband take up an active role to lead the family. If you poke your hands into his business so that you can push him into picking up the leadership role, then you are going to tear your house down. You have to be careful and to be wise enough to know how to do it. Leadership does not come naturally to all husbands or to all men. Sometimes it needs some kind of influence for it to happen. But you have to do this on your knees. You have to do this prayerfully to make it happen. Pushing him to step up will not make things work. It might even make things worse. Get the audacity to ask God to make your husband lead the family, because it is a request according to his will. And so you can have confidence going before God, knowing that he is going to answer this prayer. Go before God and ask God to help your husband pick up the active role of leadership. This is a request according to God's will. Remember, he has promised us when we ask anything according to his will, we can be confident that he hears us and our request is answered. You can pray, believe and trust, and this is going to happen for you. Also remember to ask God to give your husband a sound mind that he leads with wisdom. Remember, wisdom is an essential part of leadership. Solomon, as a king, the most important thing that he asked from God as a leader was wisdom. And you can see that despite his shortcomings as a leader, just for the fact that he had wisdom, it enabled him to execute his responsibility as a leader and as a king over Israel in the best way possible. So don't forget to always pray for your husband's mental capacity to be of a sound mind, as well as if you're still watching this video up to now and you haven't subscribed us yet, please just take a second and push that subscription button and become part of this family. Also put on the notification bell so that you can always be notified whenever I upload a new video. Like the video, share, as well as leave a comment right below in the comment section. God bless you and bye bye.